Okay guys, let's go over 1342, number of steps. The problem says given a non-negative, so the number is greater than 0, integer number, return the number of steps to reduce it to 0. So whatever number we have, we want to reduce it to until we get 0, and we want to count how many times it took. If the current number is even, okay, even, you have to divide it by 2. So if it's even, divide by 2. Otherwise, you have to subtract 1 from it. So otherwise, meaning if it's odd, you subtract 1. Okay, example 1, we have an input of 14, right? Input is 14, right? Is 14 even number? Yes. So what we do is we divide this by 2 and then we get 7. So 7 is odd. So we want to subtract 1. And I forgot to say count is gonna be 1 since we divided by 2. And since this is 7 is odd, we want to subtract 1 from it, and then we get 6, which is even, and count increases 2. And since 6 is even, we want to divide this by 2, and then if we do that, we get 3, which is odd, and we increase our count by 1. And since 3 is odd, we want to subtract 1, and we get 2, which is even, and increase our count to 4. And since 2 is even, 2 divided by 2 is gonna be 1, which is odd. Count increases to 5, and since 1 is odd, we want to subtract 1 from it, and we get 0, and count is going to equal to 6. So this is how we get our result. Okay, first thing we're gonna do is declare our function number of steps, which takes in a number which is integer. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a count variable that counts how many times we did our operations. And we're gonna make a while loops. So while the number is greater than 0, and we want to check if the number is even or odd, right? So if num modulo 2 is equal to 0, so if the remainder of the number is 0, we know that it's even. What we're gonna do is we're gonna increase the count by 1 and divide the number by 2. Divide equals 2. Alright, and now what if it's odd? Else, so if it's odd, we want to count the number by 1, or increase the count by 1, and then subtract the number by 1. And finally, we want to return our result, or return the count. And we get our result 0, 6, and 4. Okay, let's go over our code one more time. So we declare our function number of steps, which takes in a parameter which is an integer, which means it's a whole number. Okay, so we declare the count variable so that we know how many operations it did, and then later we return that count variable when we're done with our while loop. So we use an while loop to check if our number is greater than 0. So what if it's equal to 0? If it's equal to 0, it's going to automatically loop out of this while loop and then return the count of 0 immediately. Okay, what if it's not? Okay, so example 2 says number is equal to 8, right? So count is initialized to 0, and then if it's gonna check if the number mod 2 is equal to 0. So mod checks for remainders, right? And if remainder is equal to 0, it means that it's even, because let's say you have 8, right? 8 divided by 2 is 4. There is no remainder. Remainder is 0. So if remainder is 0, we want to increase the count by 1, and we want to divide the number by 2. So what we're doing here is basically resetting the number, resetting num to whatever result we get after dividing it by 2. So in this case, it will be 4. And then we'll go back to while loop again. So is 4 greater than 0? Yes, that's true. Is 4 even? Yes. So it increased count again. And then this time it resets num to 2, and it's gonna go back up to while loop again. So is 2 greater than 0? Yes. And we go to our first if statement. If number is even, is it even? Yes, 2 is even. we're gonna increase our count by 1 again, and then we set our num to 0, and we go back up to our while loop again. Is 0 greater than 0? No. So we exit out of this while loop and return our count. So for this one, it goes num is equal to 4, count is 1, and then next loop, num is 2, count is 2, is num is gonna be 1. I actually made a mistake here. It should be 1 here. And count is going to be 3, because 2 divided by 2 is 1, not 0. I made a mistake there. So it's gonna check, is 1 greater than 0? And it goes to first if statement. Is 1 divisible by 2? No, it's not. It's not even. It's odd. So it goes to count, and then it decreases the number by 1. Now we get 0. And then we return our count variable because we check, is 0 greater than 0? No, it's not. So we loop out and return count. So here, num is going to be 0, and then we return count, which is 4.